Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Hello, Mr. Sanjeev.
Hi, I hope it's okay. I think audio is all right?
Yeah, your video and audio is fine. Perfectly
Only
fine.
problem, only problem is we are in the process of shifting, so
Okay. Okay, all right. No
a bit
worries.
chaotic at home.
Yeah, so we'll wait for next 7 to 8 minutes once
Sure,
everyone joins. Maybe you can unmute and yourself
I'll
for the
do that.
meantime.
Am I audible?
Yes, Mr. Satish, you are.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Aditi.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi.
Good afternoon, Aditi.
Good afternoon, Sanjeev.
Hi, Satish.
Hi, Sanjeev. Hi.
Yeah. Great. I took a little bit of time to get into it. I was going into some other direction, I think. So it's a new version. We are so used to Zoom and Microsoft Teams that this is again a new one. So it's nice to again get connected. Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. Are we ready to start or should we wait for some more people to join in?
Good afternoon, everyone. Panchali this side from Global Compact Network India. We will just start in another 1 minute.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Panchali.
Anjali, we are waiting for another two speakers to join. Akansha Sharma.
Yes. A very good afternoon to everyone. Thank you all for joining the first plenary session of Indian Sustainability Dialogue 5.0. Without any further ado, our topic of discussion would be ESG as a key driver in maximizing value creation, with special focus on ESG acting as a driver for facilitating top-line growth, minimizing costs, minimizing regulatory and legal intervention, increasing employee productivity, increasing revenue, and optimizing investment and capital expenditure. We are thrilled to have Dr. Aditi Halder, Director at Global Reporting Initiative, GRI, as the moderator for the session. I would like to introduce our panelists for the session. We have Ms. Madhulika Sharma. She will be joining in a few minutes. She's the Chief Corporate Sustainability at Tata Steel. Ms. Madhulika has been selected as the Asia's top sustainability superwoman 2019 by GRI. Then we have Mr. Kangala Satish, Global ESG Head, Chief Sustainability ESG Officer at Jubilant Life Science Limited. We have Ms. Akanksha Sharma, Global Head ESG, Social Impact, Sustainability and Policy at Sterlite Technology Limited, STL. And we also have Mr. Sanjeev Basbarua, Executive Vice President, Corporate Environment, Health, Safety and Sustainability at ITC. I would now like to request Dr. Aditi Halder and all the SM panelists for to take over the panel discussion. Over to you, Ms. Halder.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to all the participants of the fifth version of the India Sustainability Dialogue, organized by the UN Global Compact of India. And welcome to all the eminent panelists that we have today with us. We have very important leading organizations and their representatives here. We have ITC, we have Jubilant Life Sciences, we have Sterilite Technologies, and we have Tata Steel on board. And the panelists here are as introduced, by Panchali. Madhulika Sharma, who is the Chief Sustainability Officer from Tata Steel, and Mr. Kanagala Satish, the Global Head, EHS Head and the Corporate Sustainability Officer of Jubilant Life Sciences. Then we have Ms. Akanksha Sharma, who's the Global ESG Head of Sterilite, and Ms. Madhulika Sharma, Mr. Sanjeev Besbarwa, who is the Executive Vice President of the Corporate EHS from ITC. So these organizations, when we name them, I think we all know how they are proceeding. And in the world of sustainability leaders and the club of all the participants, I'm sure all of us are very, very aware of these great organizations who are actually showing the path. To set the context here today, the discussion that we want to have here is environmental, social, and governance topics. Are they the key drivers in maximizing value creation? Now, business and value creation, because we are so used to correlating business activity with profit, we are also now forcing ourselves to understand that environmental, social, and governance issues need to be integrated into core business, not just but for profit, but also for long-term value creation. So ESG, as I understand, could actually bring a lot of pain. And I'm sure all of you, the panelists, will agree. And I see some of you smile and nod. But the long-term gain is what we are going to discuss about. Yeah. So it's very important to first listen to each one of them. I would actually ask Ms. Madhulika Sharma to share one great example that you have that Tata Steel could achieve with all the people that are working towards achieving sustainable development for the country and for the company. What is that great example you want to share that Tata Steel could achieve in terms of value creation by integrating ESG into their core business? And the same question goes for all the panelists, one by one. Yeah. So we are just before Madhulika starts, we decided that we will not have any PowerPoint presentation because it would be more interactive and not just sharing through the slides. Yes, over to you, Madhulika.
Thanks, Dr. Aditi. So, if I'm to give one example, I'll say that Tata Steel, it has been leading in terms of adopting reporting frameworks for a transparent disclosure. So we were one of the first ones to adopt GRI framework way back in 2002, come out with our first sustainability report. We also were the first in the country to adopt the IARC framework, and we came out with the first integrated report in 2016. So while we came with the first report, and if you look at our first report and our second report, the first report will be very pointed on the 6 capitals, and then how do they interact? Probably they look like silo, and that's where we, started thinking about the difficulties, and that triggered the thought that is how actually it is implemented in our organization. So ESG sits as a outside thing when we come together at the time of maybe annual report and start thinking of where to put up. But if I look at, and the whole premise of the integrated reporting format is that, framework is that it's a value creation model. And how are you creating value and balancing across the 6 capitals and not only focusing on only one capital, either it is the financial capital or on the manufacturing capital. And I think that actually, we actually created a cross-functional team which had senior leadership on how do we align ourselves to this framework that we have adopted voluntarily. And that was the first time, I think, that led to finally sustainability becoming one of the key pillars of our strategy. So we had done a materiality study, but we again revisited our materiality in 2018 through a third party thing. And also in our strategy framework for annual business plan as well as long term plan, we said material issues will be one of the key inputs for us to decide on our ABP and LTP, and we'll also have a periodicity for looking at our material issues, reviewing our material issues. And if you actually follow our integrated report, you'll see for the first time in FY18, we said we came out with it's long term, it's 5-year roadmap that is there. At that point of time, we were calling it long term. Now we call 5 years as a midterm, and then we say 2030 as a long term. And you'll see for the first time, we have 4 business objectives primarily for the organization, the entire organization. While the 3 of them are focused more on, say, value creation in terms of economic means, whether it is growth or cost leadership, etc. But the 4th thing is actually being a leader in sustainability. And if you actually follow, you will see that our goals, which were there in that business objective for the entire organization, has earlier we just started with carbon, climate change, and water footprint, which were the 2 key material issues from an environment perspective. If you now look at our goals in this year's integrated report, you will find we have actually enhanced our goalposts, and we now include things on supply chain, we now include things on human capital, and they are also part of our goalpost. So I guess this is one example that I just wanted, because while we adopted one of the frameworks, it actually triggered a series of actions across the organization, which has, and at this point of time, I think sustainability and strategy go hand in hand together in Tata Steel. And it is most of the discussions now, at least we have been able to mainstream across such a large organization. We are also adding new business streams into the organization. But every time we are making a new strategy, sustainability or aspects of sustainability which are relevant for that line of business is always there. I mean, now at least 5-6 years down the line, I can see now it's earlier I would be the champion, but now I guess everyone is now, it's there in their mind that it has to be a balanced approach. And that's, I think, from an integrated report to integrated thinking, that's where the transition has happened. So I'll stop at that. And
Okay, we'll come back to you again. Yeah, but it's nice to hear that the integrated reporting leads to thinking and action, in an integrated manner. And I think one of the main point, what I heard from you is the goalpost, enhancing the goalpost and setting that. Yeah. Great. So, can we move to Satish now? And we would love to hear one example where ESG integration led to value creation within Jubilant Life Sciences.
Right.
Yes, over to you.
Thanks for asking this question. See, any strategy, whether it is successful or not, we require a strong challenge to test it. In fact, last 2 years we had COVID, and the Jubilant sustainability is part of their DNA from 2001, and we started reporting from 2003. Integrating ESG, in the business, this has helped in a long-term value creation by decreasing the risk factors arising from national and global factors, which also include this pandemics and all this stuff. The resilience that the organization developed because of integrating ESG is enormous. So that is one of the best example that I can give. Also, integrating ESG also helped department-wise at the grassroots level, the sense of purpose for which the business is standing. The sense of purpose is one important area.
Very nice.
I mean to say, like each person, it's not only the sustainability department or the EHS department or the CSR department the ESG is belonging to. The ESG actually helps us to build a good culture, the way of working, and also it also helped us to really understand what is the sense of purpose for this business at each and every level. That's one another important value creation that we could able to get.
Yeah.
And most importantly, it's the enterprise risk management. I mean to say, how we are able to identify the risks, make the risk mitigation plans, have the disaster or disaster recovery plans, business continuity plans. ESG definitely helps into all this stuff. So I think, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, great. I think very, very important, resilience, sense of purpose, and then coming down to risk management. I think great. So no question about whether ESG needs to be integrated or not. It has to be.
Yes.
So thanks, Satish. Can I invite now Miss Akanksha Sharma from Sterilite Technologies? From your side, any one great thing that has happened by integrating ESG as value creation for the enterprise? Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, firstly, for having me here. And thank you, Dr. Haldar, for asking this question. So at Sterlite, I would say that ESG is, we look at it from a lens of embracing business transformation. And when I say that, of course, we started off with the materiality assessment, and we do report on GRI, and try to build a culture of very active disclosures and transparency. But in addition to all of that, I think what is more important is that we have taken initiatives which goes across the organization. So, for example, simple things like bringing circularity into the mainstream, and then how can we look at different aspects of environment, including waste, water, other resources, and then try to create a culture where it's not just about economics but also about environment and social impact of our resources. That played a huge role to the extent that most of our suppliers, and your question I would again circle back to, which was about creating values. So most of our customers have not just appreciated but also extended their partnership to come and join the circularity initiative. So one of our waste material is going today in a lot of cement industries, and which was earlier either going to landfills or to other suppliers. In fact, happy to share that in the sector we are globally one of the first companies who could achieve zero waste to landfill certification across. That's one of those examples. But in addition to that, we are also a tech and a network integrator company. So in all our initiatives, whether it is for the community or spanning across the business drivers, we try making sure that connectivity and technology plays a huge role, not just in terms of providing better solutions, but also in connecting a larger population, arriving at innovative approaches and all of those. So I think ESG, how we look at it is not just from the strategic lens, but how can we transform the business processes, which does not just limit to organizational value, but also extend beyond.
I think great. I think your example of circularity itself showcases that it is not just for the enterprise, but but for the society for which the business also exists. So if society has to grow, business will have to grow, and business will grow only when society also grows. So it's a great example, Akanksha. Can we come to Mr. Sanjeev Besbarua of ITC and your example, Sanjeev, from because I think ITC was the one of the first organization that moved from EHS, looked at the entire span of environmental, social, and governance issues many years back. About I think 2003-4, you started your journey from the EHS. So it's been a long journey, Sanjeev. So I'm sure you have many examples, but today we would love to hear one big example in the recent past from your side.
Thanks, Aditi. Good afternoon to you, fellow panelists, and everybody else who's in this forum. And good to be kind of talking to you all. See, I think I would first, at the outset, like to say that there are a lot of terms and expressions which are floating around now. We talk about sustainability, ESG, circularity. So many of them are kind of being also used interchangeably, if I may say so. But I think what has happened for us is there has been evolution of uh, understanding, if I may say so. There has been a more nuanced understanding of what these issues really are. So when we started off with sustainability, it was very much that triple bottom line approach, and where we did try to integrate environmental and social concerns with a strong governance systems into what we thought was sustainability. Then now people are talking about ESG. So is it the same thing that what we were talking about? Uh, Perhaps no. Okay, because sustainability, yes. I mean, there was about disclosures. It was having this, like I said, three-pronged approach. But I think ESG brings this, uh, this perspective of a risk and opportunity-based, scrutiny of your business, if I may say so. All right. And this is important because this is what has got the providers of financial capital interested. And I think a lot of this movement which has happened in ESG, or the stock which is happening, is precisely because of this. Many of our organizations have, kind of had this ethos of sustainability pretty kind of well integrated in our organizations, and everybody's been working. But when you say ESG, what changes? So what really changes is that you are required to look at your businesses with this spanning this whole universe of environmental issues, social issues, community issues, reputation issues, and identify where are your opportunities, where are your risks. And I think this has been the most significant change in the last couple of years. I mean, of course, it has been fueled by, a lot of the EU legislation on this. But I'll try to give one specific example where we thought of these issues around maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And we really tried to look at one of the risks that our businesses face, and I'm sure many of you also do, about water security. So, and in India, with climate change, even without climate change, water security was a big issue. So, how do you kind of address this entire problem? And we realized that we cannot address water security unless we address water security of all stakeholders. All right. So, all stakeholders in a particular catchment. We initiated this work around our pulp and paper factory in Kovai, and we started off with defining a workable catchment area, which spreads around 21,000 hectares with around 15,000 farmers out there. And we looked at initially what kind of water flows into the catchment, whether it is subsurface or subsurface in terms of rainfall or river flows. And we looked at what is the extractions which are happening, both for industry, for domestic use, as well as for agricultural use. And once we analyzed this problem, we carried out detailed hydrogeological studies. We understood that the most significant impact can obviously happen by reducing your extractions. But the extractions are most significant in the agri sector. I mean, in the entire catchment, almost 95% of the water is actually extracted for agriculture. So we started working with the farmers, and working with the farmers involves setting up, what we call water governance groups, self-help groups. So all these institutions have to be created at a village level. It is not just you go and telling them that this is what should be done, but to kind of give you an idea of the scale of impacts. The savings in agricultural demand is actually 5 times the extraction of our paper mill annually. All right. So our paper mill extracts around 1.2 million kiloliters per day, and the savings there is 5 times that. All right. So it is impactful. But it's not just a question of savings. It also has to lead to benefits for the farmers. So there also water security improves because there's more water available down there. They also use less fertilizers, less agricultural inputs, so their costs come down. And together with agricultural universities, we are also kind of working on how to improve their yield. So what happens is that we have a high water intensity manufacturing unit, but we know that our water issues are secure because both from the supply and demand side, these issues have been addressed. It has the support of the entire community. All right, like I said, 300 square kilometers around the unit, who are actually thanking the unit for the work which has been done. And in terms of governance, over and above whatever the governance systems that exist within the organization, we've also gone for a formal certification by AWS, that's the Alliance for Water Stewardship, so which ensures that the unit takes responsibility for the practices across the catchment, so that they are institutionalized and will be followed. So I hope that serves as an example for what you intended, I think.
Uh, I think it's a great example because the first thing which strikes me is that we always talk about compliances and getting the license to operate. I think what the organization could achieve through this multi-stakeholder dialogue and engagement, and then putting action into place on the ground, is a clear example of social license to operate, because you are having the security of the water, which is a commodity, but it definitely has a far more, far-fetched impact on the lives of many others around the operation. So a great example, Sanjeev. Thank you. So I would now like to actually, so we have, I think, about 30 minutes more for the session. I would like to keep maybe 10 minutes or so at the end to come back to the participants who are listening, very patiently to all the sharing. So the second question I have for all of you is that, as the key person heading the organization to integrate ESG and contribute not only from the enterprise but also on the larger context of society, what is the vision that you have that the organization should choose few topics which are very important for India to act on immediately and urgently? So the COP26 is again an example. Every time since at least 1999 that I was kind of involved in some way or the other, every time COP happened and everybody came back and said it is a failure. So I was just wondering today morning, what is it that is failing? What is it? So I just took one example, but I don't want to influence you with climate change issues only. Please share your vision about what India needs to do immediately and what are those issues from your organization that you feel that to achieve sustainable development goals by 2030, where no one is left behind, what are those issues that we need to immediately work on? So should we start again with Madhulika? Yes?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. So while the first thing that came to my mind was climate change, and of course COP26 just round the corner. One, because I represent a sector which has got noteworthy footprint, and it's a hard to abate sector. So both, but if I look at also from a country perspective, I think I'm talking not only about transition of sectors like steel and cement, which would be required for India, which is going to have a lot of domestic demand. So how are you going to manufacture these material which are required for meeting your meeting the infrastructure, not only the infrastructure requirement but also some aspects of social inclusion, right? So Hence, you need this economic growth to happen, and these are sectors which would actually be also helping you to transition to maybe a greener kind of economy, because steel is required for whether it's to solar panel or it's a wind turbine or even dams, etc. So steel is will be there, but then the question is, how are you going to ensure that you manufacture it with near zero kind of footprint? So I think, and same goes for the sectors like cement or chemical. So it is about transition, but also more so, since you said inclusivity, I think we have not yet started talking about, while the IPCC sixth assessment report came, but there I've read about some news articles which came post that. But as a society, as a country, we are very one of the most vulnerable countries in the world, and we have not yet, whether as organizations or as countries, started to talk about the physical risks and the resilience that we need to build, right? And I think that requires, while I think the transition requires a policy support, in terms of incentivizing the sectors to, invest more into the research and development of near zero technologies. But the larger issue is on resilience for the entire economy. And we have a large coastline, we have a very dense population, we have pockets of very vulnerable areas, we have ecosystems that are dependent on, or that are already getting impacted by all the climate change impacts that are already seen happening. So how do we together, and it doesn't only need the government to create policies, but I think it needs multi-stakeholder approach to actually make it happen. But I think the larger question is, what is it that we want to achieve? So there has to be a clarity on what is it that we want to achieve, and who is going to play what role. That clarity or that thought process, which is not yet there, I think, in organizations, in government, and also I think the larger society. People are not educated about it, but I think it will start staring at us. Maybe in next 5 years it will be very blatant, and our time to react or time to adapt will be so much less. So I think that's one subject that I think we all need to come together, work together, articulate actually what is the vision, and then who does what. Then first the vision has to be articulated as to what we want to achieve, and then who are the players who will take what actions, etc., needs to be then fitted into it. And it's a very important aspect of our SDG goals also. So unfortunately, most of our, at least the organization level focus and even government level focus, is more on the transition part. But I think the physical risk, which actually is glaring at our face, we are not yet probably thinking a lot about it. So I'll leave at that, and let others also speak.
I think it is very important what you mentioned, Madhulika, the physical risk, which is like glaring at us. Maybe we are not able to, fathom the risk. Maybe we are not able to believe that, this is very much there and we need to take action right now. So that's a very, very important point, and that changing belief level and changing the vision, is not an easy task. But very important point. I just noted down everything that you mentioned here. But let's move on to listening from Satish about the vision that you have on what are those important topics that India needs to take action immediately.
Right. When I answer this question, I'll keep the hat as a sustainability professional coming out from my organization.
Yes.
I will also talk about my organization is doing.
Yeah.
The 17 SDGs, or the 169 targets which were signed on for 2030 agenda by 193 member countries, on which were effective from 2016. Now these 17 SDGs, they are dependent on typically the 5 Ps, which we call it as people, prosperity, planet, partnership, and probably the peace. these all 17 SDGs or the 5 Ps, they are dependent on one important topic called climate change. Like, for example, I can eradicate poverty, I can do malnutrition, I can remove malnutrition, I can, build so many things. But at the end of the day, these all get, earlier in my career days, I used to talk about this plant is getting extinct or this species is getting extinct. Now the discussion is happening that this planet is going to get extinct, right? So the discussion is in a new dimension altogether. And unless planet survives, then we will talk about equalities, diversities, and of course, so many other topics, the 17 SDGs and all this stuff. If you see now, when it comes to climate change, one interesting topic I think I want to put it on the table is that in 1900, I'm just taking all of you to the year 1900. The population is across the globe. Now, it's not only the India. Let me tell you one important point. It's neither China nor India nor America, the climate change. It is a planet problem. It is the collective people's problem. It is not one country or other country. It is the collective, the entire population of the globe which has this problem. And if you see the 1900, we had 2 billion population. In that year, 1900, we were emitting around 1.95, gigatons of CO2 equivalent. If I divide that CO2 divided with the population, approximately 1.2 tons per person in the globe, we were emitting CO2. Every person was emitting around 1.2 tons per year in 1900. In 2020, now the last year, we had around 8 billion of population, approximately 7.75. I'm just rounding it off to 8 billion population. And we emitted around 31.5 gigatons of CO2. And which amounts to, if I divide it, 4 tons of CO2 per person we have emitted. If I see in a different way, from 1900 to 2020, what changed? I think unless the same human component is the supplier, the same human component is the manufacturer, the same human component is supplying it, and the same human component is consuming it. Now, at the end of the day, without demand, no one is going to manufacture. So the human component, one thing which got really changed is the lifestyle. Now, if I see a 1900 lifestyle and 2020 lifestyle, right? I'm not asking that we should go by bullock carts or we should go by horses, but definitely yes. Normally, in present scenario, we see the good practices followed by other companies, and we try to adopt it. It's now, if you see the 2030 target, the 1.5 degree. Now, if I see what is the emission they are expecting us to do, is around 25.9 gigatons of CO2, which is somewhere we emitted in between 1970s and 1980s. The emission that we emitted in those years, that is the emission we are expecting in 2030. UNEP is talking about every year 7.6% of reduction year on year for next 10 years. Now, how we can do this? Like, it's very important that it's not one nation's job or one company's job. Like, if there are now rating agencies who say that this is green, this is having high scores of this thing, and the carbon neutral, this neutral, that neutral. But at the end of the day, the fossil fuel consumption is increasing year by year, right? And it's very important. It's very important that every person needs to understand, relook the things, what is the lifestyle changes that he can make as a minimum so that it can impact the carbon footprint of the world. That's what, which I'm just trying to say this. Coming to the Jubilant, I'm very happy to share with all of you that around 42% of our raw materials are biogenic in nature. They are renewable. We are exploring towards carbon neutrality, and we are approaching towards water neutrality and all this stuff. But we are trying to do our bit, and we are just a small dot in the entire globe. And it's a collective. As a human race, time has come for us. All of us have to do definitely introspection. Definitely need to understand good practices followed by our grandfathers. Try to steal with pride what are the things that we can do now. And definitely, yes, we have a job at hand. We need to do it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Satish, for bringing the numbers up front. And, this is very, very difficult to actually turn the mirror to looking at oneself and the lifestyle. So somewhere I was reading, it's, I think, an United Nations peace proposal where the writer is saying that 75% of the carbon footprint is contribution by the cities, and we are not aware. Or we try to blame it on the business, and we don't know what we are doing through our everyday life. So this is also very important, that the businesses, as Madhulika was sharing, that all of us are actually contributing in our own way, and all of us need to understand the magnanimity of that risk that this is glaring. So this is where we are. But before I kind of get a little bit more emotional about this discussion, let me come back to Akanksha, would you like to share your vision for what are those urgent actions that we need to take?
So I think very important and insightful point shared by other panelists. Maybe I'll pick up the thread from where you left, that businesses are maybe part drivers of this large agenda. But when if we look at connecting dots between ESG and SDGs, so ESG inherently means that how do we look at investing more responsibly for a sustainable world. And SDGs, as we know, are beautifully, interrelated. So we cannot actually draw lines between poverty and hunger and, climate change and empowerment. So they are so closely interdependent and interrelated. So I think one of the major things is that across the value chain, how can we collaborate more? And, I always love the SDG 17, which is in a way, the base of all other SDGs, that how can we collaborate more and bring more partnerships between public, private, and, in the entire ecosystem to create a very mainstream environment where all other decision makings, particularly related to resources, are done in a more meaningful way. That's one thing. Second is I would like to talk about our organization. So STL is currently contributing towards 14 out of 17 SDGs. And, when I say that, it is all in a way that how can we also embrace technology? How can we bring innovations? And at the same time, look at it from the lens of ESG while working for a sustainable world. Having said that, we all know that Asia is at the hotspot of climate action, and some of the most vulnerable cities are located here, especially in India. And COP is one of the major. I mean, everybody is looking at it as some game-changing thing. So I think businesses, while they need to, of course, do their bit, but I still feel that businesses are already doing. It's up to us as individuals, and as in our own capacity, how can we bring that larger change in our respective ecosystems. So that's all I wanted to share here.
Thank you, Akanksha. Can we request Sanjeev now to share your vision for India?
Yeah. Thanks. For India or for ITC? For India.
ITC is part of India.
No, I mean, I don't know whether I have the capacity to talk about India, but anyway, I think from an organization perspective, your question is very important, because I think it's important for an organization to understand what are those key ESG issues, because there are so much of noise and everybody's pulling in all different directions. So I think it is very important that an organization sits, evaluates its risks and opportunities. We do have to follow the frameworks in terms of ESG rating frameworks, but they are different in the sense that they are governed by the perceptions of our providers of capital. I mean, they're an important stakeholder, of course, but it is from their perspective. To give an example, say for ITC, they would feel that we need to have a stand on animal testing, all right, because we are also in the personal care business. But in the priority of things, while I'm saying it's an important value, would there be other things that we really need to focus on? And here, I think I would agree with all the panelists that the real elephant in the room is climate change. And we have a fair inkling of what is happening and going to happen. We're talking a lot, but action on the ground, I think, needs to be significantly enhanced. Within our organization, what we did is we did an actual study across two RCP scenarios of 33 locations, and this is spread across the country, coastal, hills, riverine, everything, to identify what would be the type of physical risks that would be arising in these key locations. I mean, there could be factories, hotels, storage, warehouses, whatever. We got some excellent insights, and based on those insights, we are getting into the second level of studies, which will come out with the actual measures to be taken to protect yourself from these impacts, or to be able to manage that. That is the first part. The second part of the story is that our significant footprint is in the agri value chain. Okay, and almost, I think, 90% of our raw material is agri-based. And if I'm not wrong, I think agri also plays a very significant part in India's total GHG emissions, right? It would be something in the region of perhaps 65-70%. So I think there also there is an enormous amount of work to be done. We have to understand the footprint better. We have to map it out better, then decide on what kind of interventions can happen. We have initiated work in terms of identifying in our agri value chains what would be the climate risk, or rather the climate-based vulnerabilities. So the entire value chain, what could be the issues? That study has already been initiated, and I mean that is in terms of a structure of how we are addressing these problems. So I think these are important parts. We are also deeply worried about the whole inequality issue in India, because we are an extremely fragile society, and I think climate change will make it even more fragile. And our sustenance of society is something that worries us. And I think even globally, it could bring about changes that none of us would be, kind of happy with. And if I have one wish and one kind of last comment on this conversation is, I really would wish that all our policies, would really be aligned on climate change. So they're evaluated. I mean, they have their purpose, but they also need to be evaluated on what would be their performance on your GHG emissions. I think this is something that we really need to adopt, because otherwise I don't see how we will all march in step to meet this, huge challenge that is on us. Thank you.
I think, I just took down notes, and I'm seeing a very nice kind of, flow of thoughts. And I would like to, kind of just reiterate a little bit, whereby I think Madhulika started with the multi-stakeholder approach and engagement, and Satish mentioned about the lifestyle and carbon footprint, and Akanksha mentioned about how that vulnerability and the fragile way that businesses are. And I think Sanjeev is now completely like saying that there's no way out, that we cannot look at climate change in the way that government should align all their policies with climate change in mind. And therefore, the major question now for all of us is that who would bell the cat? We keep on saying that we need to work together, we need to come together. There are instances of, I think, pilot programs which are happening. whereby multi-stakeholder engagement and work is there. But on a major scale, if we have to revolutionize the way that we are, leading our lives, if we have to revolutionize the policy change, where is that trigger point lying? And we have about, I think, 7 more minutes to close the session. But I would like to actually ask this question to the panelists, and anyone can actually jump in to share your views on this. This is the key question where we are all waiting maybe for each other, but no one is taking the first step to move ahead, maybe to bring all of us together. Or maybe we don't need to bring everyone. Maybe one organization or one constituency needs to be very bold enough to take that first step. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Aditi,
anyone
since I raised the topic, I think I should respond to this first,
Yeah.
with due apologies to the ladies. But you see, first of all, I wouldn't really agree that we're not working. I think everybody is. And I think Akanksha talked about collaboration. I think that's also happening. And it is not just industry, but industry learning to work with civil society. These are big changes which are happening. But if you say that, can things be better? It can certainly be better if there's one conductor in this whole orchestra, no? And that is what we are seeing. I mean, that all of us are doing our bits and pieces, but we would have a much better impact if there's one conductor. And that conductor is, we're talking about policy cohesion. So that's my submission.
Yeah. Great. Anyone else would like to, share? I see on the chat, I think one of the participants mentioning about public-private people partnership is the only way out. But let's hear from the panelists. Since we don't have any questions coming from the audience, let's hear all of you.
See, there is a saying that, whatever you measure, it will improve. No doubt, the GHG emissions we have measurement. It is there in certain portals, some websites, and some intellectual people know about this. Right? Yes, there is an increase. It's very important that we communicate this measurement on a daily basis or monthly basis with all the people of the planet. It's very important. Unless they know it, they cannot act on it. See, if I have fever, I measure it, then I take the pill. But if I don't know that I have fever, and if I just sleep, it makes no sense. So it's very important that we need to have mechanisms in place, like how we communicate to each and every person of the planet, like the rise in the emissions, and how the moment they know it, they themselves will come up with some solutions, like how they can minimize their own carbon footprint.
Yeah.
I would just like to add in here that while we are talking about, taking lead, I think it needs to be evidence-based and data-driven. So I think a large portion of it is we are talking a lot of things still on assumption and aspirations. But I think the moment it translates into data, we are still caught up with, small organizations. How are they looking at net zero emissions? And, in some way, maybe not looking at the kind of contributions it would make, but it's high time that we move and transition from smart cities to more green cities, and we start calculating and reporting onto the city emissions and maybe country level emissions. And I think if that comes into place, and this is the kind of PPP I was talking about, that smaller areas and villages and organizations would be taken care of. So I think the government needs to definitely, and I think Sanjeev talked about the policy cohesion. It's definitely the game changer here.
Yeah, I think it's very important, Akanksha, that that the smart cities moving to become green cities and measuring them, because unless we measure how much cities are contributing to, we also don't know. We just actually push business organization to do their carbon footprint, but everyone, like the way what I was sharing earlier, that will definitely bring the change. Madhulika from your side? You've been quietly listening. Yeah.
No, so I think I would echo everyone's thought that I think, as Mr. Sanjeev said, that there has to be a cohesion, right? Everyone is doing. See, we are all representing responsible businesses. We are all understanding what are our material issues. We are trying to deal with it, resource for it, etc. But whatever, even if we have an ambition to collaborate, etc., there'll still be, if there is no clarity on the policy, you can only do so much.
So
For
much.
example,
Correct.
I'm just taking an example of, say, as a one of the leading steel producers, oldest steel producer in the country, we want to significantly lower our carbon footprint. Okay, so there is one thing which is available, while the technologies would be even the resourcing for the technologies, which will be, you have to put pilot plants, you have to put demo plants before you can actually scale it up to the levels that it is required. The other dilemma is that the country requires more steel. So if you look at the last IEA steel sector report, which was published last year, it says while there is a contraction of steel demand in all other geographies, including China, where it will be a demand drop of about 25%. India is the only geography which is going to see a 3 to 4 times demand, right? So if these are all conflicts, right?
Yeah.
That you have a demand, you have a commitment to transition to a much lower footprint, and you have only so much resource. Okay, so where do you focus your resource? If there's a clarity on policy, then and it's a steel is a commodity, so no one is going to pay extra for the floor prices for steel are
Correct.
not set by the producer, it is set by the global steel demand, right?
Yeah.
So who is your customer ready to pay 10 rupees extra for low carbon? And looking at the steel, you can't say that this is a lower carbon steel, right? So I can't have a first mover advantage here, right? That I have discovered a process, or I have patented a process, I've scaled it up, put so much R&D efforts into it, and then I'm making, because at the end of it, if it was selling for 100 rupees, it will keep selling for 100 rupees or even less, based on whatever is the price at that point of time. So that is why policies are so much required to create a level playing field, not only for the sector but across cross sectors, right? So the customers it will do a demand activation. And I take example of renewable energy sector. It took us about 10 to 15 years to come at a state where now the prices may be lower than the power being produced to, say, thermal route. But there was a subsidy given by the government to boost up the capacity being put up. And on the other hand, for bulk consumers like us, there was an RPO obligation. So there
Yeah.
was this whole clarity, and the whole value chain was created. And I think this is not only required for steel sector. There are so many. Sanjeev talked about agri. So there could be this. It's such a kind of it's a very complex thing. It's not easy thing to do. It's easy thing to talk about, but very difficult, I think. But yes, that's why I probably said in the beginning, what is at a country level, what is our vision that we want to articulate, right? And that will give the clarity for everyone to then start focusing towards that. We can't be pulling all the horses in all directions, and the cart is going to stay there, right? So this is one thing that I think is required, and it's not only for the sector that I represent, but I think everyone is facing challenged by the similar kind of issues.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. So I think we've heard, and I'm not seeing any question on the chat box. I'll just click onto the question and answer. Yes, there is one question I see, which is, what's the major challenge industry leaders are facing while integrating ESG in their business models? This is one question which has come. Any one of you would like to take that up before we actually close the session?
Can you repeat the question?
What's the major challenge industry leaders are facing while integrating ESG in their business models?
From my perspective, frankly speaking, ESG is a blessing. I mean to say there's no challenge, because it is a. Let me give an example. Like ESG helps you to engage different departments of an organization to help them to do how to actually run their department, how to run their business. At least you have a standard, you have a guideline to tell them. So there is not at all a challenge. Trust me, if once you start implementing it, you really enjoy. There will be so many soldiers along with you. Earlier, you may be a lone soldier, but once you start implementing it, you will get a lot of soldiers along with you. And that's a benefit. There is not at all a single challenge, at least I have faced in my career related to ESG.
Great. Thank you, Satish. And thanks to all the panelists, Madhulika, Akanksha, Sanjeev, and Satish, for joining. And I'm sure the participants benefited from this free-flowing exchange of thoughts and experiences. And I thank the Global Compact India chapter to bring this session on to all of us. And over to you, Panchali.
Thank you so much. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Halder and all of our wonderful panelists for contributing to this discussion. Thank you for enlightening us with your knowledge and presence for such an insightful conversation on this topic. Now, I would like to request all the participants to join us for the next session, which will start at 3 p.m. Again, thanking all the speakers and the participants for joining the first plenary session of the Indian Sustainability Dialogue 5.0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye then. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Let's get out of this.